Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and today we are joined by a special guest, Warren Ponder, who is a researcher, social worker by background and trade over at One Tribe Foundation here in North Texas. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the research that goes into first responders around the unfortunate reality when certain individuals choose to take their lives. It's very deep research and very deep topic today that we're going to get into. We'll have some other conversations, I imagine, around just combat veterans and first responders in general, and how their mental health is impacted, and as they transition back into lay population and everyday life. We are not just a podcast here at Breaking the Cycle. We are also a therapy practice located in Hurst, Texas. If you are relating to any of the information we talk about week in and week out on this show, you can find us at breakingthecycletherapy.com. Reach out to our therapists. They can help you get better. Ladies and gentlemen, Warren Ponder, how are you doing?
Good to be with you. Pretty good.
It's good to have you. So we were chatting a little bit before, and we'll ease into it, but you do a lot of research, and One Tribe Foundation does a lot of research around first responders. Mm-hmm. I noticed that the mission gets into some very specific pieces of information. With research is always really helpful, but why don't you lead us into it, kind of tell us your role there and what's kind of led you into all this as our viewers get to know you.
Sure. So my background was I did undergrad out at Texas Tech, we were talking about out in Lubbock. After that, I was interested in doing a clinical psychology program, but my GRE scores were atrocious. I've always been bad at standardized tests. So I took a year off. I graduated, took a year off, and decided to go into the military, And when 9/11 happened, I'd only been out at Tech for like 3 weeks. And I mean, it was just surreal seeing all that stuff, going down and the ripple effect that it had on, friends and, students out there. Yeah. So I knew then I wanted to go in. It's just, I thought that if I, stopped going, and then join the military, that it would be really hard for me to sort of go back and finish. So I went and finished, and I had a buddy who fought in Fallujah and got kind of messed up, and that really, really, really impacted me and really solidified that, that's what I want to do. So I graduated in 2003, and then I applied to some of the doctoral programs. Couldn't get in, so I decided to join the military. Yeah. So I did my basic training at Fort Benning in Georgia, and after that I got stationed at Fort Lewis up near Seattle. I think they call it Joint Base Lewis McChord now. So I joined the Army, and then we went to Iraq. I joined as a infantry, and then we went to Iraq for 15 months, and then we came back. And, I could tell the way that impacted, myself and other people in the platoon. And it really sort of made me want to research and look at, what's the effect on, combat and relationships, whether it be with your significant other or kids and things like that, because it can sort of really shake things up and sort of put you on a different trajectory. So after that, I went to UT Arlington. I did graduate work there in social work. I was very lucky, and I got on at the Dallas VA Medical Center in their substance abuse unit. So I did my second year internship there. Then I got on as a fellowship. And then in 2010, I joined a it's under the VA. Not many people know about it. It's the Readjustment Counseling Service. It's the Vet Center program. And I got, I worked at the one in Fort Worth. And I was there about 7 years. And it really, really left a very big imprint on me. The way that the Vietnam veterans, would describe what they had to deal with and how they were treated, when they got back. And again, I'm sure we'll, get into the parallels between that and, how first responders are being treated. So that's sort of my clinical background. So I left there in 2017, sort of took a year off, and then I joined, it was called Stay the Course at the time. It was started by a lady named Tempest Sherrill. She's also started the Brave Fight in Fort Worth that, focus on vets and first responders. So I got on with her, and I did some clinical work for about a year, and then that's when I transitioned into research. And that's when sort of everything, because I had published some things in 2012, but I really hadn't done much since the dissertation in 2014. So when I got back into sort of the research world, I sort of eased in slowly, and we started gaining some traction, and we've got a pretty good process down of how we sort of analyze things, write them up, and things like that. So like you were saying, the number one overarching goal of my organization and myself, it's really just to go to fewer funerals. I mean, it's pretty straightforward and blunt. Now how you go about that, we can debate that. There's a lot of ways that we as an organization do that, but I do it most through, looking at the clinical data that we collected, when the clinicians were at our organization.
Yeah. So you guys actually go out and connect with the families once they've been impacted and collect data that way?
Well, we had a counseling program for a long time, and we collected, a lot of self-report scales like the PCL-5, GAD-7, PHQ-9. Basically, if there was a construct we wanted to look at, depression, anxiety, or resilience, or whatever, then they collected that data. And I will say I really lucked out because before I even got there, she'd already set up the infrastructure of, all these different scales that they were using to sort of help their clinical practice. Yeah. Well, when I came around, it sort of begged the question, why don't we look at things in the aggregate and see if we can see any trends that the clinicians could use and target, when they're working with their clients.
And I'm sure there's a wide answer to this question, but what are some of the trends that you started to notice come up, whether it be with first responders or combat veterans? Like, what were the trends that you think people should be aware of?
Depression, hands down. Yeah. When we looked at predicting, what impacted or influenced people sort of taking their own lives, it was depression through and through. And we could see that within the first couple of weeks of just looking at the data. It may show up a little bit different for family members versus veterans, but within these trauma exposed populations, I mean, that's the common undercurrent. So some people call it like the big five, like neuroticism or negative affect or cognitive affective depression. That there are nuanced differences, but they're largely the same. And, we were able to sort of isolate that pretty early on. And then that's what sort of, got us thinking about, well, how do we clinically intervene and how do we, what actionable things can we have, from the data?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to highlight that although there is a difference between the way a family member of a first responder or combat veteran may experience their depression, the thread of that emotional experience is what we're really digging down to anyway. There's a lot of similarities in how to understand them, maybe not necessarily in its practicality of how to treat it, right? But a lot of times these things are gonna, if you know what you're looking at, it's gonna be pretty similar, the depression.
Well, I mean, to me, what you're saying, now we're sort of getting into treatment and theory, and that's my wheelhouse and I love it. And there's a very big initiative, arguing that, there needs to be trans-diagnostic, treatment, but the aim is you look at the emotional undercurrent between these disparate constructs. Yeah. And when we write something up, we have to be sort of very specific and things like that. But in a setting like we're at right now, emotions are emotions. It may show up a little bit differently depending on job, but we're all human. Right. There's absolutely no reason why that should look markedly different. I mean, there are nuances, but it shouldn't, look markedly different.
Yeah. One of the areas in my background in research is around the family disease of addiction. Mm-hmm. And when you get down to the bottom of like, whether it's the addict, right, or the alcoholic or the family member affected, it all very much starts to bleed and look very similar in the practical symptoms that are presenting in the family system. Mm-hmm. So even as I hear you sharing, it's like, no matter which emotional thread we look at in the research, who's affected, it's important that the whole system gets treated because we are all affected. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a bleed through conversation we always try to have here to remind people when we get away from, or when we get back to just the base conversation that anybody can understand, I always like to bring in that everybody needs the support. Mm-hmm. And if we think we haven't been affected, we may want to take another look at that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got a lot of personal experience, like we were saying before, in that, and it casts a ripple effect, within the family system, like what you're talking about, and sometimes there's enablers, sometimes there's not, but there's no question, the toll it takes on all parties. And yes, it's a family system, but there's an intergenerational piece of that. Even if somebody can get sober, you're still peeling back layers of, the onion for years. And they may get a little bit more emotionally healthy the further they get, in the program. But, there is no doubt, in my view, that it has a very significant impact on the kiddos.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the most vulnerable populations are the ones who are going to carry the symptoms, which I think can bleed back into kind of some of the discussions with the research that you guys are doing with first responders and combat veterans in a different light than just addiction. It's like, you come back and we were talking a couple weeks ago with Dr. Stephanie Miller. She's in the area doing a lot of work with like first responders as well in therapy sessions. And she was explaining that process of, you're taught a set of skills in how to assess and to deeply assess as like a combat veteran. And you come back into society and you don't need to assess things that deeply. And that impacts people around you, and it impacts you deeply within the community. And I think there's definitely a movement, especially in states like Texas, to make sure that those things are supported and just understood. But it is a conversation that goes unstated a lot, where then veterans just get completely forgotten about, whether that be a combat veteran, a cop, a firefighter. They go out and they do all of these really life-threatening and dangerous jobs to keep people safe, but then when they come back in society, they get kind of pushed away of like, oh no, we don't want to deal with any of that, why don't you just go over there, which we know aids in that process of depression, which leads to the research that you guys are doing at One Tribe. I imagine, I mean, there's so much more to it, but like as I'm tracking with you and seeing some of the stuff you sent over, I imagine these are the things you guys see day in, day out.
I'll try to avoid too many tangents
Sure.
Today, but one of the things that really draws my ire is everybody is, so one thing we did do right after Vietnam is, we swung to the other extreme of, everybody's a hero, and all that stuff. But what people don't understand is, in the stuff that I write, maybe about 15 to 20% of first responders have prior military service. So it's extremely odd to see people, the same people say, we love our troops, but then, they make incendiary, demeaning comments, about the first responders. So, it's, I think people really need to highlight that more, because these people are doing the same function in the sense that, they're putting somebody else above them. They want to go serve and help people. Now, it looks different from a cop, maybe from, a firefighter or an EMT, but the common undercurrent is you've got somebody who, in general, is selfless, who is trying to, better their local community.
Mm. And that's a solid point that runs a thread in my mind always to stay grounded, is that we were never meant to be so concerned about, as individuals, we can become aware of the world at large, but we were meant to be involved in our communities and to go and serve those communities. And one way that we've done it in this country historically is to go and protect our communities. And that's combat veterans, cops, firefighters, security guards. You go down the list, it's like these are individuals who've said the best way I know how to serve with my big body is to go and protect, you know? And it is a very selfless thing to do. Then there's this modern age kind of conversation that you see all over the internet. It's like the industrial military complex and all this kind of political shit. And we lose sight of the human being. And what I always, anytime in conversations with people in therapy settings, is try to remember the human being, right? We talk about that a lot with addictions, is like hate the disease, not the person, right? You can have political views, right? And hate the political system, but don't hate the people who have those beliefs, which could tangent into a lot of present day and just yesterday events that I imagine we could talk about. We want to be mindful about how we talk about them, but it's like, this is exactly where it strikes a chord with me as I hear you share. It's like, remember the human, right? Remember that you're a human, right? And this is how we better serve our community. And it helps people to not have to go to drastic measures to pull themselves away from those feelings,
Well, the whole thing with the immigrations and customs enforcement and the debate there about, oh, well, they're wearing masks, et cetera. To me, it's common sense that they would, because all the rhetoric that's out there. So, trying to unmask and the obsession with trying to identify these people when they're just, trying to, again, not trying to get political, but they're simply just sort of doing their job. And, they have a lot of skepticism and extra stuff that they have to deal with it. And like you're saying, within that individual who goes, let's just say, works an 8 or 10-hour shift and then comes home, that impacts the family system and the stress that individual is under. It's almost impossible for it not to bleed over. On their significant other, but real specifically about their kids.
Yeah, and I want to dive into that part too, because without going into too many tangents, right? The kids are affected, and in our society today, the kids are absolutely affected, not just by, right, the rhetoric like we're kind of tangenting on right now, but by when these things come back in the home, having experienced really difficult jobs, really difficult, not even just job. It's like when you think of a combat veteran, before we even get to first responders like cops and firefighters, their job is to go fight and die, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times. Then you come to a first responder like a cop, and they're not thought about in the way that they're by us, that they're trained, which is like you could be encountering somebody with a gun or a knife or a weapon at any point. And we don't think about that in society. We just judge it, right? It's like they are trained to make sure that at the end of the night, they can come home to their family. That's what they're trained to do. Meanwhile, keep all of us safe. And we would all hope that when we pick up the phone and make the call that they show up. And that's why the rhetoric stuff too, on the polarized ideological or even identity-based politics stuff that kind of gets ruffled around today, really just I have to detach from, and I have to pull myself away from for my own sanity. Because I do hope that those first responders not only will show up if I call, but after the call, if there was an emergency, that they get to go home safe too, because they're a human being and they're a member of my community, But if that gets lost, and this
it is lost already.
How is it lost already?
Well, okay, so I'll back up.
Yeah.
What you were saying about what they have to deal with. I can't remember the media outlet that it was, but you've had like news anchors, and you've had people sort of go into a shoot house that is that's how like the military trains, or I'm sure that's how the police do their training of how to clear a room, and things like that. And you'll have some of these news people go in there, and they will have an opinion before they have that experience, but then afterwards, and they see how quick that individual has to assess a threat and figure out to shoot or not shoot, then they consistently seem to say, wow, man, okay, now I get it. It's really hard for them to go and do that.
Yeah.
And with body cams nowadays, everything is scrutinized, and you have to be well, you should be anyway, but you have to be on your game at all times. And the skepticism and the Monday morning quarterback stuff after something happened. And yes, there's plenty of events where somebody shouldn't have shot. Whether it be in the military or in a civilian capacity. But these people are having to make split-second decisions that are hard for people to understand if they've never had to sort of walk in their shoes. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of moral indignation, from some folks. And again, I mean, what I'm saying, I'm for purposes of this, I'm straight down the middle. I'm not advocating for Team Red or Team Blue. It's sort of what the current climate is like and how it impacts them themselves.
Yeah, and I wish I could remember off the top of my head the name of the researcher. He's on the East Coast. He's a Harvard educated gentleman, and he did ride-alongs for a couple of years. African-American young gentleman did ride-alongs.
Yeah, no,
I'm sure you've seen the video as a researcher.
Or something.
Something like that. Yeah, and he fully expected, right, to believe the rhetoric that's pushed, right, which is cops,
I know the quote. Yeah, I know the quote.
Yeah, cops are pieces of shit and all this kind of stuff. And he goes and does these ride-alongs and finds that these are just like grandma loving, cookie eating,
right,
cops that just want to go home to their kids and their wife. And the vast majority of the calls that they're responding to, they show up respectfully. They are helping de-escalate situations and being treated like shit the whole time. It's just, if all you ever do is turn on the news and listen to the rhetoric, you're lost to the actual tangible truth. And that's something even in a clinical realm I like to stick to, is like, what's the relationship with the truth?
Okay, well, I wish I think it's something prior. I think he's an economist.
I believe so. Yeah, he's not a social services kind of guy.
Well, I think it's probably public, but I know what you're getting at. I mean, him and his team analyzed, I think, data from like 3 different states, like 10 different departments. And, he thought he was going to go in and find, there's a racial component that there's a significant predictor of that, or, certain people of a certain demographic are, targeting, African Americans or something like that. And I mean, the quote was, it was like, this is the most surprising finding of my career, or, so, I mean, that's a paraphrase, but it's, so that begs the question. So what's the difference between, the emotion of what maybe somebody wanted to find versus what the data says? Yeah. And that's where the emotions come in, and that's what amplifies all the rhetoric and fear that is going around right now.
Yeah. Which is why, in the light of this week, the things that have been happening, I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's continue on. Let's sit down and have a conversation, whether we talk about the things that are going on in the world today, what's happened in the last couple of days, or just have the conversation of the research that you guys are doing over at One Tribe. It's important to stay grounded. It's important to share good, truthful information, because it's where a lot of the fear comes from. It's where a lot of, I think, just dysregulation comes from, is being pulled to one side or the other because that's who you have to be. It's like, why don't each individual choose who you want to be in a free state democracy and take care of yourself to the best of your ability, you know, and keep an open mind, you know. And that's a part that I think, with especially the things that have been happening this week, is everybody splits, the aisle splits, and now there's not a lot of open-minded discussions. Everybody's against each other. I don't have a solution for that. I don't have a whole lot of other things to say other than these are human beings lately who've lost their lives. You guys focus on the research of how that impacts people, and it's really heavy stuff, and it's really important. I think mostly that, I'm sure you would share the same sentiment, and I'll shut up, but is that we take care of ourselves during times like this, and maybe take a little bit of a moment to understand the gravity of the way that society has kind of just been brushing past this stuff, so that you don't. That would be my sentiment as a clinician, is make sure you take some time this week to sit with how you're feeling about these bigger things.
Well, yeah, I mean, I shot you the email yesterday. I'm like, hey, you know, do you want to pivot? What do you want to, you know, and much to your credit, you know, you're like, no, show must go on, you know, and I mean, my limited comments about it, like normally I'll put something on Facebook, or, you know, I'll text family members, or there's sort of like a group chat we have for, you know, some of the guys that were in my unit. And I mean, yesterday I'm just like numb or shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing that spooks me the most is people's reaction.
Yeah.
You know, meaning that earlier today there was some lady from some university in Tennessee. I think she was like an associate dean. She said, you know, put something on social media. She's fired. You know, after the flooding down in Central Texas, you know, there was a pediatrician who got fired in Houston for making comments. And, you know, people's reaction and shows me that we're diverging more than, you know, what we should be doing. And that really spooks me, because if you're going to sort of have your walls down, it should be after something like this, when we all come together.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what happened in 24 years ago.
I was gonna say, right, it's like you had mentioned 9/11, right? On 9/11, we came together.
Yeah, how the hell has it been 24 years?
Yeah, flew by. I was a kid. I was in 6th grade when that happened. Funny.
Well, I feel older than yours now. All right.
But that whole time, you know what it really taught me as a young kid becoming a man is like, we come together. Like, no matter how the government responds, I didn't know any of that. I didn't understand any of that. But what I could see in my community was the American flag everywhere. Right. I could see it on everybody's car for years. I could see the way people talked and embraced each other right after, and for a while after. People just came together. They supported each other's businesses. They enlisted in the military to support their communities. You know, it's I won't say a lost art. I think people still desire and crave coming together. The ways we do that is different from community to community, but there is something on the grander scale, on the stage of the country today, that does not do that. It's more of like, well, how do we wedge and divide? I could probably say that that's media and the way that they do it, but it's not just media. We interact with it. So here we are.
So I think you can sort of frame this as us versus them. You know, so we were attacked as a collective, you know, on 9/11. So it's sort of us, you know, Americans versus, you know, the bad guys. You know, so we were sort of able to come together, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but I'm a massive fan of attachment. And, you know, when you look at it from that framework, you know, the attachment figure at the time, that was the president, and he sort of had walls down and, you know, allowed people to sort of do, you know, physical or symbolic sort of emotional proximity seeking to them. You know, whereas the stuff that we've got going on now, the us versus them is different. It's, maybe team red versus team blue, or, people who have certain views that others may not. And I think that it's only getting worse. And that's the thing that really, really scares me.
I think those are really great points too. Like I wouldn't have thought right off the rip to look at it from a standpoint of attachment, but I think it's a really good.
That's how I view everything.
Yeah, it's a good framework. I think a lot of people relate to that too. I think it's been a framework in the last 10, 15 years that people really relate to as well, like their attachment styles and things like this. But when you were talking about it, I was thinking just in the framework of this last week, the us versus them. A young lady gets stabbed on a train, right?
Yeah.
How does that become, and this is just me as a therapist thinking about like the empathy and the sympathy side of things. How does that become an us versus them versus just a moral discussion of we shouldn't be killing people, right? And there should not be a back end. This, I'm just going to share a sentiment from where I stand, and then I'll turn it over to you. But it's like, there's this whole discussion about the guy who had stabbed the girl, of like a GoFundMe was created for that individual about their mental health. Now, I'm a mental health professional. If the person is unstable, that's one thing, and that individual clearly is. That does not condone then that is the excuse for taking a life. That individual needs support. And one of the points I was making with someone the other day is we seem to, as a society, want to have the conversation about mental health, but when it comes to actually turning towards it, we take all of the issues that are actually real mental health issues and say, nah, no, right? No, if it suits me theatrically, great. If not, I don't want to deal with it, right? Until someone gets stabbed.
Well, that's another us versus them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can frame it whether it's pigmentation, eye color, or long hair, short hair. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. I really need to watch what I say. I mean, this is a.
Well, it's important. It's important too. Like as I hear you like watch what we say, it's like we're on the forefronts of a lot of the mental health discussions around these things. And I think our society, with a platform like this, we should be cluing in and
He
sharing
shouldn't have been out
details.
of jail. 14 arrests and cashless bail in January, shouldn't have been out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I see the mental health side of it, mm-hmm. But there were things in place that things that should have been in place that weren't, that I think contributed to that. Now, if you want to go nerd and you want to look at the dependent variable is that event happening, you could probably list off a litany of things that would be like very significant predictors. So mental health, I'm sure that's in there, but to me, it's more of a policy issue than a mental health. But I think the news said he's got schizophrenia or something,
Yeah, it's like, and at what point do we look as a society and say like, well, yeah, I mean, I would imagine that they have some kind of mental health diagnosis or disorder. As a clinician, it's like, we shouldn't be the ones then where it's like all that brunt is put on mental health. It's like, okay, well, like you said, what about the policies that addresses someone who has been arrested 14 times? When is enough enough? That's the conversation lately. It's like, how do we address these issues as opposed to ignoring them?
Well, the issue's not getting handled because people are looking at the situation from an us versus them. And that has to be eradicated before people can look at this one event and so sure, if you have whatever personality disorder or whatever diagnoses, the fact of the matter is still got up and just did it for no reason. Mm-hmm. And that's another issue that I have of how that's being covered. Other events that happened, say in New York City with Daniel Penny, I think he was a Marine who choked a guy on the subway. Yeah. There's a lot of negative press about that, but not about this. So So that's more evidence that I look at and I say that's us versus them. So I mean I remember from Iraq, certain things that I saw that when it made the news back home, it had been filtered like a million times.
Yeah.
It's sort of like in you were in 6th grade, so you're a shit ton younger than me. But growing up, they had a game in PE where the teacher would say something, and all the students would be in a circle.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Telephone,
so, yeah. By the time it got back, it was something completely different. So that's the way I view the media. It's not like an objective reporting that's going on.
No.
It's an agenda that's getting pushed, and that has to go way before healing can begin. Because we're not even to that point, because we're looking at an objective event like that is on video, and people are just looking at that and having wildly different conclusions.
Yeah. That may or may not even be theirs. And that's the part, like when you really sit down sometimes to look at the media side of things, it's like, whose opinion is this? This is like some collective garbage kind of thrown together, pushed out narrative that anybody that just watches the thing that happened could look and say, this is wrong.
And both sides do it. So
Yeah. This is not political.
Both sides do it to a degree.
Yeah, I would put it maybe in a realm of like when I teach and walk with a client in the realm of mindfulness, all right? We have to have certain things that it's like in sports, we use this term called focal points, right? To center yourself. And so I was a pitcher, I'd step off the mound, I'd find a focal point, I'd take a deep breath, right? Without the focal point, I'm kind of looking all over, and it's going to be a little harder for me to get grounded and that could be different in the way that I connect with it from practice to practice, game to game. The same way it is for any individual when they're coping with their emotions. You have to find something maybe moral, something outside of you that you can connect to. It's like, okay, well, obviously there's going to be the conversation in society where a lot of people are going to turn to God, right? But really what we're talking about is like a set of moral truths that our whole society, our whole country is founded on.
I agree.
But our mental health is dependent upon, which is an interesting bleed over. We need moralistic truths, or else what are we grounding ourselves to? That would be one of my perspectives, at least.
I think so. I do think that as a country, we were founded with certain principles. I mean, you can go back and I think the Great Awakening, I think the Great Awakening in the early 1700s, then the second one, I think in the 1790s. So we do have the foundation as a country sort of with those sets of values. And we've gotten further, away from God, and we've accepted certain things that people do in society, and we hold them up when it may not be the morally right thing to do. And I love baseball myself, and I think that there's kids need to, whether it's Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or sports, kiddos need to be in there because that's that's where they learn to interact with people that may be a little bit different than them, and that whether the outcome is they win or they lose, they still get an experience with somebody that they may not otherwise interact with.
Yeah, well, and we need that perspective, to be able to. I played baseball with a lot of guys that were different than me, had different views, different beliefs, but we believed in baseball. We wanted to win. We worked together. And this was something I remember, was it 2008 is when Obama was elected. I was coming into junior college. And in his re-election, I was at a 4-year university, and there was a lot of political tension then around the color of this president's skin and that whole narrative with certain sides of people's views. It was just as polarizing as anything else can be polarizing. And I remember my coach said something really valuable that it stuck with me to this day is when the leader steps up and is your leader, that's your leader. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to be the leader or didn't get elected to be the leader, then shut up. Mm-hmm. You follow your leader. Now, with that being said, we live in a democracy. We follow our leaders and we get to have our voices heard. And that's a beautiful thing. But when we start fighting ourselves, then we're not even, when we start us versus them, right? It's like when you look at a family system, when it's like, well, mom's bad, dad's bad. Okay. Well, now we've moved so far away from being able to look at the individual and the internal problems inside, right? It's like, if I can't talk with my neighbor, they're the problem, then we're never going to find out where the line actually needs to go between our two properties, because now I think you're an asshole and I don't want to talk to you about it. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, now we're never going to find a solution. If I can look at myself and say, well, how was I approaching him as an asshole, and approach a little bit more kindly?
That requires actual effort by the individual to look at themselves. Yeah. And our society, for whatever reason, refuses to do that, by and large.
Yeah. Well, especially with the type of things that have been happening just this last week. We should be sitting with grief and loss. We should be sitting with a society that allows whoever this individual was to get a military-grade weapon. These are difficult conversations, and we have to sit with that because as a society, we've let these things go. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm pretty moderate, like you're saying, I'm pretty down the middle. And never on this show are we trying to ever get political. But there are certain things we could be standing up for. And I think that's what hit me this week is like, I have a platform. I need to be kind of at least saying something about this. And I think what I would say is like, we definitely, if you've got a good heart and a solid head on your shoulders, you need to be sitting with the gravity of somebody just got shot this week for expressing his views and beliefs. That's a dangerous, dangerous road, not just for people's mental health, but for a society. You get shot for what you believe. That's a dangerous place to be in as a culture, as a society,
Well, I think anybody with half a brain would realize that if something like that, what happened yesterday, don't make it a post, on online, on whatever platform, like encouraging it or validating it. But you have people who do that. Yeah. And that's why I was saying at the beginning, the thing that absolutely alarms me is that's why the reaction bothers me so much, because in my view, that's a barometer of where these extremes are. Yeah. And you can't you can't make any movement until you get to the middle. And we can't get to the middle until we all have the same goal. You've got several groups who have different goals and visions of what should be going on, and they don't have much common ground right now. Yeah. So if we can't get it after something like yesterday, then that really, 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 is a frightening thing that should bother a lot of people.
Well, and one would hope it would in a democracy. Without going too deep into this, it's like, here's one perspective. It's like having worked with people and families for a long time. When you have multiple kids and they're fighting and they can't come to an understanding of what their solution needs to be.
Get along shirt.
Yeah.
That's what I do with mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You got a massive shirt. They both.
Yeah. You put them all inside of it.
They have to stare at each other.
Yeah. Hold hands.
I haven't done that.
Yeah. But it's like, eventually, let's say you take an unhealthy system. One authoritative figure is going to step in and shut it all down. Mm-hmm. Not a great way, but a lot of family systems operate in that way. And I wouldn't necessarily look at our system and say like it's the system at large is the epitome of health. It's too big to be the epitome of health in the first place. I think it's a really good democratic system, right? I wouldn't be the last person to knock America as a whole. I love the country that I live in. But if everybody's fighting, what happens, and this is a historical point, is eventually someone with a bad idea creeps in and they gain a lot of clout and a lot of following and a lot of support.
You're describing the 1930s in Europe.
Yes, very specifically. Hitler, very specifically. This is how these things happen. This is the Iron Curtain in Russia. You know, this is how this stuff occurs. And I'm not going to sit here and suffer any delusion that like all of a sudden because of these things, that's what is going to happen in a democracy like America. It's going to take a time, but it doesn't take that much time if we double down on some of this of like, oh, well, you know, someone gets shot for what they believe. Let's move on. It's like, it's a dangerous game.
Well, when you have extreme groups who come in, I guess like that in 1933 or whenever it was, you know, that was the, you know, the Depression. Mm-hmm. So you had all these, you know, economic things going on, and you know that instability. That's when you know a power vacuum exists, and then you can have you know some. I don't even like saying his name, but sure. you know an idiot like that. Now again, obviously we're not even in the same you know universe. It is that, but that's the template of sort of how things happen.
Yeah.
And again, until we have people that want the same thing, meaning like safety, security, you know, and things like that, attachment principles, you know, then nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the depressing part about. I mean, just to be blunt, that's why this is so damn depressing. Because I don't see any movement. And if there is movement, it should be after an event like yesterday.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. I think that's what hit me like a ton of bricks in the moment is like, I don't imagine much is going to be done. That was, I think, what was hitting me yesterday is like them, hate them, disagree with them. Somebody gets shot at a college campus and like just on campus. What are our universities, colleges doing? What are they doing? What are we doing as a society to make sure that the people attending those colleges are safe, you know? And I think I had an overwhelming feeling the other day as a result of just kind of the last 10 or 15 years of feeling like, you know, it'll be some social media posts and then it'll be over, you know? And that is, I just can't help but think how tragic and almost pathetic that is.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was his kids. I mean, they're
tragic,
like 4 and under or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they took an alternate route, and whatever their new normal, you know, is. I don't know. It's just that's probably why I didn't post anything. It was just so damn depressing and frustrating.
Yeah.
Because I don't see any improvement. And it, you know, people need to wake up.
Yeah, I think just a common decency too, like the point you were making as well. If we're going to talk about just like decency of not making posts after somebody's died of a celebration. His kids were there, you know. It's like, and there's gonna.
I didn't know they were there.
Yeah. It's just. And then you're going to make a post in celebration that a child just lost their father to the most horrific thing you could imagine. You're lost. People, there's just the social media age is full of clout chasing. Let me get paid. Let me go viral, and you're lost. And it's just a complete disconnection from the things that matter. Like you've been kind of interspersing in the whole conversation about the children, man, the kids in the society. Let's not even get into the fact that they could click a safe for kids section on YouTube and they're still going to be subjected to pornographic material. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I that's at the top of my bullet points of what. And I mean, you can even see that at, you know, within, you know, maybe sometimes the veteran community. Sometimes that's appealing because, they have a fear of intimacy, and maybe it gives them like a subjective sense of control, and they're in power because they can turn it off or turn the monitor off or whatever, whenever they want. So, I mean, I saw that a little bit.
Around pornographic material, is that what you're...
Well, yeah. Why that's more appealing than maybe being with your significant other, or something like that, because it creates problems, for the dyad.
Yeah, well, especially like if we call back to what you were talking about in the very beginning, is like one of the patterns and trends right off the bat with first responders in research is going to be that threat of depression. It's like, well, yeah, a lot of them are going to turn to behaviors of control, like you were describing there, but also ways to kind of pull themselves back from threatening social connections, which aren't actually threatening. They're perceived as a threat,
That's the thing. That's the issue here. It's all about perception.
Yeah.
And what I view as a threat, maybe it doesn't bother you at all.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Individual differences.
Yeah. Well, and here's a kicker too of like some of the conversation just a moment ago of like the social media stuff as it pertains to really tragic real life events is like what I perceive as a threat is somebody making a celebratory post about somebody's death. I take that as a threat. It's like, I don't want that person in my community.
Well, I'm tempering my language very much.
Sure. Sure.
On this, but I mean, I just beat it to death, but it's the attachment type stuff. It's how you reconnect after there's been a disruption.
Yeah. And
we're not reconnecting, after something like this. It's pushing us further apart.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's within one of the things that's been a little bit decent has been the way that the some maybe in the music world or entertainment world, the one thing that Charlie, was very well known for was sort of bringing, faith and religion, and things like that. And I think he was pretty darn successful with that.
Yeah.
And you've had athletes and entertainers come out and, make posts saying, attesting to how, he helped, with that part of people's lives. So, I mean, while it is bleak, or maybe I sound jaded or something, he made wildly successful strides, in some things. And I think that's what you just say, threat. I think that's sort of, that was in the cocktail of, the ingredients of what, some people perceive as a threat.
Yeah, I can't help but notice, because we get flack even too. We ruffle feathers with some of our short videos when I mention God, and I pull no punches. That on this channel, it's my channel. I believe in God, and I do believe that in a clinical setting there is a place for that if someone wants to explore it, and I don't shy away from it if it comes up. And we've even caught flack as a small community from people. And I do think that that's a big part of, I don't think that's why he got shot, but I think it's a part of like, well, why is there so much vitriol and hatred? It's like anytime you start talking about God and spirituality, people get really, really violent.
I'll lean into it. I think that and calling people on their stuff and being very direct with his opinions were extremely threatening and made other people feel uncomfortable. And that's when you have people who do these dumbass things. To me, I go back to the Charleston, South Carolina shooting, 2015. I think.
Yeah, I think it was 2015.
It's that's where you've got it. One of the biggest idiots on the planet. Who goes and does that, and he was inspired by some of the political stuff that, and some of the neo-Nazi shit and, all that stuff that came with it. And it was a recipe in his brain that made him go and do that. He didn't think anybody else was, they were all talk on the internet. So, I need to go do that, So I wonder too, if these individuals, they see that nobody else is doing anything. So maybe that's their justification of why I need to go and, perpetrate, whatever issue there is. Yeah. But we don't have thick skin at all. People can't have a conversation about God, about, traditional values and things like that. And that's, in my view, a lot of what has, created this vacuum for, negative things to sort, the devil or whatever you want to call it, to come in and make roost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It takes hold. No matter what it is that you believe, these are things, really in any religious teaching you're warned against. And I guess really what I would just say on our platform from a clinical perspective is stay grounded, keep an open mind, stay positive, talk to each other, attach with each other. Yeah. This is what I'm hearing Warren share around every juncture, around all the tangents that we've gone on today is attach, connect, be a part of your community, be aware, So when we're not, it becomes us versus them. And you're never going to find the truth in an us versus them. You're going to find fists. And in this case, you're going to find violence.
I'd rather have fists than somebody getting shot.
Of course. Yeah. That's something that when we were kind of chatting about it earlier, that I really resonate with is like one of my best friends in life started because we got in a fist fight. All right. We then resolved it. And that was that. But if you make an ultimate decision,
that's the way it used to be.
Yeah.
You have a fight. If you win or lose, whatever, shake hands, move on.
Yeah. And oftentimes, now you have that in common. Well, we just beat the crap out of each other. I mean, that's a good enough place as any to start for some common ground. Mm-hmm. But it's not even that it's a dead art. It's like that is like the last thought on people's mind is how to come to the common ground. It's you disagree. And
we're not open-minded.
Yeah,
we're walled off, and we only allow information in that verifies whatever preconceived notion that an individual has.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the media comes in and sort of does a pretty big disservice. That if you agree with Team Blue, you watch this station. If you believe Team Red, you watch that station, and they're inundated with things that sort of verify some of their notion. Again, I'm trying to tread real lightly.
Well, yeah,
here.
I mean, yeah, and I appreciate that too because we're not a political channel, and I can tell from
we're having an American conversation. This
bingo. And that's really it is like, and we've had quite a few guests on the show of like generations ahead of even ours, right? Who share a different perspective of when they were kids and it was an American conversation. And that's the kind of stuff too, outside of anything like mental health. It's like, I'm a member of my community, my county, my state, and my country. Why can't we just have open conversations about when I go to another county, they do things a little differently? Okay. Right? I don't go to someone else's house and tell them how to do their dishes, but if I'm there, I maybe might join them in the way that they do it if they needed support or help, if I want to be of service. And if I don't, then I'll bow out and leave. And that's common decency and how to interact with people. So I appreciate that we're watching a little bit to not dip in too far, but a point I was going to make is I was talking with a client this week who around their family, it's always the political conversations. And it's like every time they sit down, and I shared with her, I said, if every time you sit down with someone, the only thing they can talk about is politics, that's insanity. That's insanity. There's just so much more in life, number one. But number two, no one's ever going to change people's beliefs, So we've got to learn to come off of it a little bit so that we can find, like you were saying earlier, the common ground where motion actually takes place, especially around the things that have been happening this last
It's bonding. You need the. So I mean, this is where kind of the research is kind of cool, because at least me, I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that emotions precede cognitions. So it may be like a millisecond or whatever, time variant you want to use, but I feel like there's like a physiological thing going on, and then after that we use a word, to describe it. So, when we look at all these current events going on, with attachment, it's all about how you reconnect after, whatever disagreement there was, and we're not doing that. That's the problem. You can look at Sue Johnson. She just with emotionally focused therapy. She has different names for the dances. The attack, and the withdraw. Withdraw and distance and pursuit. So the one, and it's sort of like what Gottman, when he predicts divorce with like a 90% certainty or whatever it is. It's once couples get to that point of they don't even reapproach each other and they just sort of run for the hills. That's where we're at, sort of like on a meso and macro scale. And that's why I think that this could really serve as a blueprint for people to understand how to heal after events like these.
Yeah.
Because with research, you can rip and pull from different theoretical frameworks, and you've got one concept here that may fit over there.
Yeah.
And I really think that we need to come up with a way to sort of reapproach each other instead of running from each other.
Yeah. Well, I really knew this was a recent one that clued me into, like, man, we are really disconnected from each other in society when the fires in LA became a political discussion.
Yes.
I had a lot of friends out there. I've got my practice is based in California, so a lot of clients affected by it.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You do the remote?
Yeah, I do the virtual. Yeah. And I had built my practice out there, so I just continue it. But it's like, I had clients where I have one client, their house was 2 streets over from an individual's house burned down. Those are just like, it's the real conversations in the community of people coming around and supporting each other. But then when you look on the media, it's this political discussion of like, what is Trump going to do? And where's the money? And blah, blah, blah. It's like all this just nonsense of like, why don't we just cover the fact that people there are really kind of trying to support each other? The big businesses, governments, and insurances don't seem to really be doing a whole lot to support the communities, but people are, and that's being entirely missed. It's this whole huge political discussion. And that was just a recent one where I was like, wow, I mean, why would anybody watch the news anyway? Because
they want to be told they're right.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, that's ultimately the truth, yeah. Yeah, they want to confirm their bias, sure.
I mean, I don't have much free time, but sometimes I try to seek out like an extreme different, I've got my subjective viewpoint, and I want to go and get like a different look at what's going on. So maybe, you mentioned baseball. I love baseball. Growing up, WGN, would show some of the Chicago Cubs games. So I sort of gravitated to that, and then I sort of started looking at all the stuff that's going on with Chicago and the crime and all of that, and it does seem to be that the blanket response is whatever, say, the president does, the knee-jerk reaction without even thinking is the opposite. Now maybe he could get some messaging better, and the other people could receive it better, but I mean that's where we're at. You should I mean, if saving lives and reducing crime is, the goal, then both parties, not just one, need to sort of, be able to shut up and sit at the table and have a conversation, and don't do it, through the damn media.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's.
Yeah.
I mean, if some normal dude from I'm not normal, but if some dude from DFW can think this out, I guarantee, some of these political consultants have. but they're gonna recommend against it because they want to get elected or they want to jockey for position for for 2028. And I mean, for me, that's one of the most beautiful things about our country is every 4 years there's a job interview.
Yeah.
If you do a shitty job, you're going to get voted out.
Right.
So, it's the free market. It's the competition of ideas. And, if the more variety of opinions that you have, I think the better the end output will be. Whether it's politics or therapists or whatever the group is meeting, I think the end product is much better when you have widely different life experiences at the table.
Yeah, and especially if you can take a power struggle out of it. So now, especially with government, that's a pickle. All right, because power is the game. But
again, it's another us versus them. It's not we.
Yeah.
Until we start thinking in we, nothing's going to change.
Yeah. And
that, to me, I don't know. I didn't connect all these dots before we started talking, but I guess for me, that's what was so sad, about yesterday is, you've got commentators who say dumb stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, guys, today we probably would have gone in a different direction if some of the events in recent light this week hadn't occurred. And Warren and I kind of touched base on that the other day. But when I really sat down and thought about it this morning, I couldn't in good faith and good consciousness not at least have some of the conversation with another professional in the field about the state of the world. Because that's part of our job too, I think, is if we're going to be doing some of the social media stuff, is to discuss it and show some of the perspectives from balanced professionals, not to tell you guys how to do anything, but just to share maybe some mindful tidbits that aren't overly saturated with opinion on a tragic event. And so I'm glad we had a chance to talk about that. I know we probably typically would have just kind of focused jumping into some of your research articles and things like that you guys are doing over at One Tribe, but I want to make sure I closed and capped that off so that I could turn it over and just kind of, what are some of the things that you would share with them of what you guys are doing over at One Tribe? We have their website in the description that you can find if you're interested in some of the research for first responders, combat veterans, and individuals maybe who've experienced, a loved one or something taking their own life. They'd find a lot of research over there, but what would you share with them?
So my office is down the hall, and when you sort of walk into the waiting room, we've got a massive, it's sort of like over here on the wall. You've got this massive flag thing or whatever, So we've got photos of people who have ended their own life, and I wouldn't even want to count them. It's 7,500, maybe. And any time I think about slowing down, then, I look at that and I'm like, oh, okay, that's really not an option, So for me, it's a very personal thing. It's almost impossible to not have somebody who, has chose to end their life. And the thing for me is it's preventable to some degree. You've got normally, a cocktail of things that sort of go on with it. You've usually got a stressor, whether it's losing a job, ending a relationship, custody. You've got some stressor, and a lot of the times you have somebody who's under the influence of something. And, I think that sort of lowers their inhibitions. And it makes them a little bit more likely to do that. So with the research that we have, what I spend my time in mostly, and I'll back up. So what my day sort of looks like is going through SPSS, the stats package, and I sort of live in there, and I just start playing with different variables and seeing what predicts what. And I'm very grateful. The data set I have is about 3,000 people in there. So when you have larger samples, you can do more. You can do more things. And there was when I first got sort of back into it in 2019, 2020, I started off with sort of what I knew, which was relationship satisfaction and how couples communicated on a combat deployment through attachment, and found some pretty cool things. In general, the vets like to sort of distance themselves from the emotions and not want to communicate with their significant other stateside, whereas the individual stateside, they were always anxious. They were always watching the news. I know my husband's in this unit, and they don't want to see anything on the news with that unit. So it was largely based out of wanting to learn about my own lived experience. Yeah. And when 2020 came around, I really wanted to laser in on the first responders. And the reason why I did is simply because I don't feel like they're getting a fair shake right now. And when I worked at the VA, one of the groups of veterans that really left the biggest impact on me were the Vietnam veterans. And, they could be in a firefight on Friday and then they could be discharged Saturday night. Yeah. It's absolutely wild. And when they would land at Travis Air Force Base in California, they were getting spit on, like literally. And I had ones that, we worked on that a whole bunch. They, in a perfect world, they got rid of their military clothing. Oh.
Thank you, Kendra.
I'm all over the place.
It's all good. That's what she's here to help
ADD
us
is fun. HD. But. So they, when they were coming back, they had, all these negative things that were going on that they had to contend with. So they were told to internalize it. Don't talk about it. Don't mention it on any job applications or anything. Don't even really tell anybody that you were over there because you're going to get a world of shit for it. So that's like a perfect recipe that every therapist in the world would, oppose.
Especially in men.
Right.
Do not do that to men because they will unalive themselves.
Yep.
At the end of the road, there are a million other variations before you get there that you're going to see from that. But why tamper in those realms? Yeah. But
we owe the Vietnam veteran a ton. All the stuff that they put up with, and a lot of them battled substance abuse, and this is where the intergenerational piece comes in, because you've got their kids. So if they're out drinking or they're out doing whatever, and they're not home with the kid, then that's going to negatively impact, the experience with that kid.
Yeah.
One of the neater things I did see was when they had grandchildren, that most of them were retired or they were 100% service connected, so they had free time. So a lot of them would spend time with their grandkids, and they viewed this, not all, but some of them viewed this as sort of like a second opportunity to get make amends for what happened with their own children. So that was my frame of reference, and I saw what that clinically looks like 50 years later. So they get back in 68, 69, and I'm seeing them, some of them for the first time coming into therapy. I saw the chaos and the loss that breeds and how it impacts everything. I mean, they were dealing with depression, substance use, like we've done more things with like moral injury, and things like that.
Yeah.
So I saw that the first responders, but specifically the police, were getting treated like that.
Yeah.
And that's what made me sort of dig into that, because I have a large sample size on, different subpopulations, but that's why I've really lasered in with them, because they need the attention right now.
Yeah.
So maybe some people have a podcast where, they can kick around some of these ideas. Like they've got good ones like Code for Couples, which is a lady in Denton. I don't know if you've... So there are ones out there that do it. My contribution to this is the data and writing up the articles.
Yeah.
So when I was trying to tie it all together, what I saw pretty early on was depression, and we did. So I don't want to go full nerd with some of the analyses and different things like that, sure. But there's one approach called network analysis, and it's sort of, you can tell the computer to throw everything together, and it sort of groups, different symptoms together. Yeah. And what we were able to see is the connector between those two was the negative emotions. So that, from a data point of view, that was clear as day. So all of a sudden, now we get to do the scientific method, and we've identified the problem. So we came up with a solution of how to target that. I'm sure you're familiar with the, if you like it or not, that's another conversation. But there was a EMDR. It allows the clinician to have some latitude, and getting creative. So we identify the problem. It was these negative emotions. So we found an assessment that I used for my dissertation, and we approached the counselors at our organization, and we said, "Hey, this is what we're thinking. Do any of y'all want to, try this adaptive protocol where we target the emotions instead of the image itself?" Because it targets just the image, and then you pair the negative cognition with that, then you get the SUDS down to 0. Then you install like a positive cognition. So we sort of looked at it, and we said, well, why don't we just attack the emotions? Common sense would say if that's the connector, everything else should collapse. And we had one clinician who's outstanding, took like copious notes and things like that. And we did a mixed method. There was a small sample size of 3, but you can't argue with the results. The results, it reduced everything. So that's how, it's just one example of how we can use data to help clinicians, directly target what needs to be.
Yeah. Well, it's how you take something useful, and we love EMDR around here. You take something useful like EMDR, you take a protocol, and it adapts.
Yep.
Right. And that's how, any treatment for anything, any disease on earth. It's like you hope that these things adapt and grow and change over time, because we can always be doing better.
Well, nobody's going to come up with some brand new intervention. So what we probably see from now moving forward is just like a little wrinkle
tweaks
to it.
Yeah.
I like, there's a combat PTSD conference that's in San Antonio every year. And, it's from the Department of Defense. Well, I got Department of War now, I guess. Sure. So the DOD puts it on, and they're real big at pushing like prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy. And, it's been studied to death. So now what they're doing is they're saying, okay, well, if you don't have clinically significant reductions by session 5, then we're going to switch you to a different modality. And, so that's just one wrinkle that they're doing, so you're not going to have Francine Shapiro. You're not going to have something. Yeah. Like a good example would be written exposure therapy. That's been studied in first responders and paraprofessional. You don't have to be a clinician. They can do it. So So that's the type of things that I think we'll see moving forward.
Yeah, little tweaks, little wrinkles, like
Yep.
you're saying, and theories and modalities that have existed for some time now, and yeah.
I'm very big on theory. You have to have some way to interpret your results. It just okay. Well, depression went down, so something relationship. Depression goes down and relationship satisfaction goes up. Why?
Yeah.
You have to have something as a frame of reference to interpret.
Right.
If you don't, you're just shooting in the dark.
Well, and yeah, I think also like as the practicing clinician side of things, it's like, how do I make sure that the thread is continued so that client doesn't have to come back in with recidivism?
Yep.
Because the problem wasn't on any type of solid foundation as to why I as the clinician understood to explain how it worked, so that they understand to go back to it.
Informed consent.
Yeah, it's like I agree with you fundamentally on those principles. I have a question that I ask guests every time they're new on the show, but any last statements you have for our guests here?
Yeah, maybe the court program.
Okay, you want to make a note on the court program real quick?
Yeah.
I know we were gonna talk
it's
kind
fine.
of a lot about that, but we'll have Warren back on too if hearing about some of the court program stuff is stuff you guys want to hear about.
Okay, so in short, when veterans came back from the post 9/11 wars, there was a lot of involvement in the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. So in 2008 in Buffalo, New York, they stood up a program called the Veteran Treatment Court. And that's basically I'm oversimplifying it obviously, but if you get arrested for a DUI and you've been in the military and deployed, then you can go into this court program. It's just like a family court or any diversion program, but you go in there and it has different components to it, such as like clinical requirements for individual and group. And you have to agree to the treatment plan, and if you can adhere to their rules and graduate, then the charge goes away. So that was 2008, 2009. So if you fast forward by 2012, there was about 150 of these in the nation. So it spread and it's gone absolutely wild. I would just be shooting. There's 300-400, maybe even 500 of these across the nation.
Oh yeah, sure.
But the very first one for first responders is in Tarrant County.
Small
in
world.
Fort Worth, right? So and again, I'm not a lawyer, but they pretty much cut and pasted the language from the veteran program, and they applied it to public safety employees. So the Texas legislature in 2017, they passed it. And that gave authority to the local jurisdictions to try and figure out, or it gave them the ability to start their own. So what happened after that, the commissioner's court in Tarrant County, they did their magic, and they agreed to let it happen if a judge came through. And a judge in Tarrant County, Chuck Vanover, he stepped up to the plate. And I mean, if you want a bio of him, it'll make you feel like you haven't accomplished much in life.
Sure.
Because he was a police officer for a long time, firefighter, paramedic, prosecutor, and put himself through law school, and he's a judge now. And he's a colonel in the JAG, or whatever they call that. So he stepped up to the plate, and that started in 2020. So I was at work at the time. Our office was right down the road, and there was a public meeting, and I went there and I met with them and agreed to independently evaluate the court program. And we had an article published in April of this year that shows that, their approach works. It reduces depression, thoughts of taking their own life, anxiety, PTSD, and it increased resilience. So we're trying to really push that and have other jurisdictions start it. There's been an extreme amount of reticence from media outlets. I have sent emails to all 4 local affiliates down here, nothing. I don't even get a response. Then I did the same to several talk radio outlets that I thought would be sort of sympathetic, crickets. So I think that
these are your routes.
Exactly. And I met a colleague there, Janine Galusha. She's a forensic neuropsychologist or whatever. She's out of Dallas, but since I've never been a first responder, I need to sort of, if I have questions, I need to have somebody to, approach. So she is the sounding board for that. And her and I have agreed we're going to sort of make this our mission. And I think we're going to launch a podcast ourselves, like I was telling you. And maybe we can come back and later and talk about that. Yes. But the bottom line is, if we've learned anything from Vietnam, we should be able to see what this clinically looks like and how this is affecting the family system of these first responders. And it should be a call to action for other jurisdictions. We're not asking for special treatment. All we're asking for is them extend the same courtesy to first responders that they did to veterans. And this court program is the first in the nation. You've got about 3,100 counties in the nation, and this is the only one. I think Dallas County is in talks of doing it, but I think that other major municipalities should, hopefully see this and maybe see the utility of having it, because what these professionals have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is affecting them, and we're acting as if they're simply just, robots, and it doesn't bleed over in their personal life. It does.
Yeah.
So that's my soapbox, and that's going to be my contribution to what we're seeing culturally right now.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming and stepping onto the soapbox and sharing some of that today, because, media just, it doesn't seem like traditional media is the way to get.
They're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These medias, where people are sharing information and having community conversations, this is where the wildfires grow. Right. And any way we can help stoke those fires, man, I'm ready to let things burn. Let's stoke the fires. If we can continue to push this information out and help you do it, we'll do it.
Well, yes. So I call it the first responder court. It's a mouthful. It's the Public Safety Employees Treatment Court. So they can just throw it in Google, and it'll take them to the Tarrant County website. But if anybody's got any questions about it, you've got my email. You can post that in the description. But it's really trying to create a movement and get that going.
Absolutely.
So that's my narrow contribution, trying to learn from what we saw with Vietnam veterans to the way that first responders are being treated right now.
Absolutely. I have one last question
Sir.
that I ask guests when they're first time on the show. If we were going to build a mental health amusement park and you got to build a ride there, what would the ride be called? What would it do? What color would it be?
Why do you ask me that? Probably a lazy river, because I would just want to float and see what's going on. I would want to observe other people, make notes, and then try to come up with a plan of how to fix whatever's wrong.
I like it. Very cool. Any last comments that you would leave our guests with today?
We've got a lot of division going on right now, and what we need is people coming together after events like this. So get a hold of your loved ones, talk to them, give them more kisses before they go to bed, and really enjoy what you have, because you never know when, it can be taken like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Just love hard. That's all it is.
Yep. I agree. Warren, thank you for being here today. Yep.
Oh, good looking shirt. You might want to say something about that.
Yeah. Hey, you know, you can get merch, shirts. I'm sure they have other points of pieces of apparel. You can find One Tribe Foundation's website in the description. But ladies and gentlemen, Warren Ponder, PhD with One Tribe Foundation. We break the cycle here every Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We will see you next week with another guest. We love you. Take care. This is a nice shirt.